So this is a quick sideline to my two-part series on the end of the Montreal Canadiens Stanley Cup dynasty in the early 80s. Now, this story needs a little bit of background because I really don't know why even the trade came about. In 1982 in September, in what was considered a salary dump, the Montreal Canadiens traded Rod Langway, who eventually ended up in the Hall of Fame, a very good defenseman, comparable to kind of a Larry Robinson, as well as Craig Laughlin, multi-season veteran Doug Jarvis, and Brian Ingram, which was at the time their number 4 defenseman, to the Washington Capitals for 2 players, Ryan Walter and the Capitals' first overall pick, Rick Green. Now, Walter was a good player, 35-goal guy, and Rick Green was a good stay-at-home defenseman, one of the best. But in some circles, they said basically it put back the Montreal franchise for 2 years, but to many it saved the Washington franchise. But before the Caps got Langway, they were nothing. There were 8 years of existence starting in the 82 season, and they hadn't even had a season with a winning record. They hadn't even made the playoffs, and that's 8 straight years without the playoffs. And everybody knows the Capitals in the mid-80s to the late 80s and early 90s, they were rocking. They were a very, very good team. In 1987, they almost outlasted the Islanders in that famous 7-game series when there was multiple overtimes in the final contest. But what Rod Langway brought was a presence, a captain presence. I don't think he would ever been a captain of the Montreal Canadiens now with Savard, LaPointe, Robinson, Gainey, everybody there. But, you know, he was a leader. Now, if it was a salary dump, it worked for Montreal because some other good defensemen, including Chris Chelios, came in later on. But for 2 years, the Montreal defense was completely lost. They picked up, cast-offs like Robert Picard and tried Gaston Gingras for a while, and they never had that big defenseman until Chelios showed up. Robinson was still there, but Robinson was more defensive to make up for the Laughlin and Jarvis and Langway and Ingram being traded. Now, Brian Ingram has said in published reports throughout the years that he wasn't sad to leave Montreal. He felt that the media was too hard on him. And Rod Langway basically didn't really carry it away. Very straightforward guy, very great player. But I think the big winners of this trade had to be the Poland family in Washington, because they could finally go to their fan base and say, listen, we can do this. And when Washington finally won the Stanley Cup with Alex Ovechkin, there's a parallel or a direct line between the Langway trade, the reestablishment of the franchise. See, Washington Capitals were a joke. The jerseys were a joke. Their hairstyles of their players were a joke. Guy Charon, Yvon Labra, and people like that was a joke. When Langway showed up, there was no joke. Washington was there. And it kind of weird too with New Jersey too as well. A few years later, it was like these new people that were battling the Islanders in Montreal and Toronto. It was a very interesting time, like mid-80s, late 80s, very underrated as an era, because we always think about Gretzky in Montreal 86 Cup, but like I said, the rise of the Capitals, it just takes one trade. So is it a top 10 trade in NHL history? Yes. Is it a worst trade by the Montreal Canadiens? No. That'll be for another podcast. There's no end to it, ladies and gentlemen. So as we like to say in the Habs dressing room, Guy Lapointe used to say, get me a bucket of steam. And it is cold December night, you're going to have to go far to find it. Anyway, hopes it's find you well. And don't forget, like, subscribe to my podcast channel. If you like it, tell your friends. If you don't like it, keep your mouth shut. Bye.